Everybody, my name is Christine, and here today we have Erin Long, who is our CEO and founder of Global Education Therapy. Hi, Erin. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Christine. Great to talk with you. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. So, one of the ideas behind this webinar was not just to know Erin, who is an expat parent, been a part of the Foreign Service, but also a speech therapist and has been doing online speech therapy for quite some time. But she's also been working with parents for a long time. And so, I think what's kind of nice about this was that. As an expat parent myself, we would have all these little conversations that were so insightful. So we thought, hey, let's go ahead and share this to our community. So once again, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks,
So
Christine.
before we start, what we're going to do is just kind of go over our sponsors and affiliations. So go ahead and check all of these people on our website. And this is just a great stop for parents who need international school counseling or online school options, or even just families who are looking for an online psychological educational assessment. We know that's super hard to find. So we have it right here. And these are people we trust and that we're partnered with. One of our new partners is actually Expat Nest. Vivian from Expat Nest is one of the great therapists who works with tons of expat families as well as preteens and teens on just daily issues and just giving them strategies and tools. But what's really important about them and really nice is that everyone who works with you, it has that shared experience with you, since it's not something that every therapist knows. So please go ahead and just give them a click on our website when you have the time. All right, Erin, please go ahead, introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Well, so I originally started out, as a young person, I always wanted to go into education. School was not my favorite thing, but I got a lot of intervention as a kiddo, a lot of help. And I knew I wanted to go into something where I could help people in my future. So I went to Cal State LA and got my master's in communication disorders because, frankly, there's nothing more that I love than talking. And I can't think of anything more important than being able to communicate. It's how we get through life. So, yeah, I became an SLP. And while I was in my master's program, my husband and I met. And he was interested in the Foreign Service, and I was kind of not sure about that, but I did go to Mexico with him. I had just graduated. I was a very green but very enthusiastic speech pathologist, kind of panicking, thinking I would never work in my chosen field. But literally within one day, I had a client in Mexico, a kiddo who needed speech therapy, and it was somebody in the consulate. And they, I guess my husband had mentioned that I was a speech pathologist, and they jumped on it. And we still keep in touch with that family today. But I set up a therapy room, and I had a pretty robust practice of seeing kids who live there on a permanent basis, but were attending the international school, and then expat kiddos who need a little bit of extra help. And then we went to Brazil after Mexico, and I sort of did the same thing, set up a therapy room. There was a large American school there, so I also worked in the school, going in and doing therapy in the school, which was nice because the kids had their afternoons free and didn't have to come see me for therapy. So basically, I was the American English-speaking therapist in the community, and that meant I always had work because everywhere you go, people do need help, and kids do need to get through school. But while I was in Brazil and I was getting ready to leave in around 2010, I thought, this is just really, it's very upsetting to leave a child behind when you know they still need your help. And somebody said to me, would you consider doing this online? And I thought, okay, I guess. And unbeknownst to me, the American Speech and Hearing Association was pouring a lot of time and research into what they called telepractice, which is online speech therapy, because so many rural kids in America weren't getting the services they needed because there just aren't enough special ed providers in enough places. So I went back to the United States and I took every single course I could get on telepractice, and I got my certification in telepractice, and I started Worldwide Speech. And the name Worldwide Speech came because of the domain was available. And we thought, well, that's our clientele. They are worldwide for sure. So we started off just doing speech therapy, and really originally we thought we were just going to be working with older kids, that would be the population that could handle online therapy. But really quickly, I started meeting so many people who were doing online therapy with really young children. I mean, including preschool children. So once we kind of got our feet wet and got enough experience, I started hiring therapists that had early intervention experience, and we went forward with making sure we got kids the services they need, no matter where they live. And time zones are a challenge, but we have always been able to manage getting our clients the services they need. And yeah, we started off as Worldwide Speech, as I said, but it wasn't long before we had a parent asking for occupational therapy. So we brought an occupational therapist on staff, and OTs were doing the same thing. They were trying to figure out how to get their services to people in rural or remote areas. And then before we knew it, we needed a reading specialist. So we hired a reading specialist. We hired a special education teacher. And it just became a special ed company where we could provide the services that a special ed team would provide, but doing it online. And we did spend about 12 years with the name Worldwide Speech, and it is how we became known. But it was time to start thinking about, is there a name out there that would really reflect the breadth of our services and the fact that we aren't just a speech therapy company, that, we don't put our speech therapists before anybody else. All our services are equally important. And we thought, global education therapy, let's make sure everybody gets the services they need. And we ran with that. And now we are global education therapy. And this has just been a wonderful experience for me personally. But I cannot speak high enough about my team and the providers I've hired, because they have just made a difference in so many children's lives.
Definitely. And thank you so much for sharing not only just your professional journey, but your personal journey, right? I really love that you have your own experiences as a child going through the services, going through the schools. So I think that's what also makes our company really special, is because you are a great leader, first of all, thank you. But also, many of us have our own experiences with education, not really meeting the standards that we were capable at that time, and then finding adults, finding people to help us, and then wanting to help others. So that's really something we're passionate about. So in addition to that, of course, the nice core little part of today's webinar is just a nice little casual conversation between us about Erin's top 5 tips for expat parents. The first one that I absolutely love is being kind to yourself during this process. Erin, do you think you can give us a little bit more information what you meant by that?
Well, I think it took me a while to learn this, but I can't emphasize enough that moving is so upsetting in our lives. We don't realize what our home is to us until we pack it up, until we move into a home that's not set up. And And every place you go is different. Every place you go, you have to find new things, you have to find new resources, and it's never the same twice. And so I think when I started this, I thought, okay, this is what you do. You pack up, you wait, you go, you land, you get to work, your stuff arrives, you set up your house, and boom, you hit your stride. But it rarely goes that smoothly. There's going to be all these bumps along the way. You don't know when your stuff is going to arrive. You don't know what condition your stuff is going to arrive in when it's been
Right.
shipped abroad. And then, when you add children to that and you have to
Mhm.
find care for them, or you have to find schools for them, and even if you've done all your research ahead of time, you don't know until your feet are on the ground what that school is actually like, what the atmosphere in the school is like. There's so many unknowns, and there's so much you're leaving behind, and there's so much stress of the new life you're encountering. So being kind to yourself, whatever it is that means being kind to you. For me, it means taking a nap, you know, getting some more regenerating my energy so that I can give my children what they need, so that I can be a pleasant person, because there's only so much of me to go around. There's only so much of anyone to go around. So some people it's going out and playing golf. For some people it's reading a book. But you know, whatever it is, let your kids just play, or let them, run around, or let them be online with their friends. Maybe they
Yeah.
really miss their friends. Maybe online games is how they're connecting with their friends. Just giving everybody the time and space and allowance to move and settle in a new place. I can't emphasize it enough, because moving is so hard and it's so disruptive in life. And if we don't build that extra space,
Mhm.
we will likely not thrive as much as we could.
Definitely. And I think that's really an important part, that everyone not only give yourself grace, right? Give yourself, be kind to yourself, but also everyone kind of transitions differently, but also giving time for that self-care within that time, right?
Right.
Because I know, like for me, I like to transition with like a checklist and stuff, but some people are like, I need to sleep right away. Or some
Right.
people are like, okay, I need to be in Zen. So I know that's one of the points. Could you kind of emphasize a little bit more about that transitioning differently, and how transition is different for everyone?
Right. There's so many factors that go into how you're going to transition, what your role is in the family. For my kids, they've they've got to start a new school, and they're worried about finding friends. They're also worried about keeping their friends. So, you know, and depending on their age, sometimes they're just like, you know, where are my toys? Where are my favorite things?
Yeah.
For itty bitties, that really matters. That they like their comfort zone, but for older kids, maybe they just do need a lot of screen time so that they can um, get at connect with friends from other places and feel safe in that zone, because no matter where you land, you're going to be living somewhere, and you have to set that up as a safe space for everybody. And like for my husband, he's just landed, he has jet lag, but he's got to get to work. Like he's got to get into the embassy or the consulate or whatever it is, and he's filling out all this paperwork for you know saying we agree that we won't tear down the house, all this stuff that he has to
Logistics.
worry about. And for me, yeah, I've got to get my office together and everything, but my job does allow me to just set up a computer, and if I have a table and a computer, I can pretty much work. But I do know that for me, the house is very important, the kids are very important, and getting them into school and getting them settled and figuring out food and what we're going to eat. All that really, it matters personally to me. That's very important to me. So I can kind of just shut everything else out when I'm transitioning. But my husband can't. Like, he does have to go into work. The kids do have to go to school. And there are spouses I know that do need to, like, as soon as they sit down in a new place, they got to get back to work. So my point is, everybody does transition differently. I'm an adult. I know that, I'll still be able to call my family. I still have my friends I grew up with. They'll always be there to talk to. But for my kids, it's very different. They've left behind people that they've only known as children. So it's a very different experience for them.
Definitely, definitely. And I like that, depending where you are in life, depending your preferences, on top of the fact that everyone transitions differently, right? There's no right way to transition, right? So within that, right, like some people might need more screen time, or some kids might need it to connect with their friends, or even watch like a familiar show because
Right.
things are so different. Whereas like some kids are like, I just need to go outside. I need to run. I need to get that energy. Did you feel both your kids had that difference too when they transitioned?
Um, I think my kids are a lot like me. Like, I think when they get tired, they're just, yeah, they would both just wanted to, like, find a TV show, and
Yeah.
they want to be they want us all to be close together in one room
Yeah.
and having a shared experience. Um, but that's, yeah, something I've noticed. Like, if there's another kid, twice we've been in places where there were other American kids on the street, and as soon as they saw those people, they were like, oh, gotta go, gotta go meet
Oh,
somebody.
well, that's so cute. And that's so great for them, right? To be like,
It
oh,
is,
there's that community. I think that's
right.
another big part
And that's
too.
really important, and it's really important to have a community.
Yeah.
And people who have already been at posts, like, they're going to be your best resource for
Right.
finding new things.
Definitely, definitely making those connections. That's another thing too. I kind of realized I like that, we're focusing a lot on transition. It's different for everyone. Give yourself the self-care you need during this stressful time. But I think another thing I know you've moved many points in your life with kids and without kids, but I've also noticed that, a lot of our families we talk to are like, oh, we're moving again. It'll be fine. We've done this. But I think something you mentioned was every move is a little different, right? Like for me, when I moved as a kid a lot, it was fine because, the language was the same. I had my parents. But when I moved as an adult, that was a huge shock because I was like, wait, I have to do all this logistics that I haven't done before. And then on top of that, oh, I have to learn a new language now. So I was curious what your experience was without children, or maybe as the kids get older, what were those different moves like for you?
Yeah. So I think for me, when it was just my husband and I moving abroad, it was, meeting other young people, and there was a lot of thought about, what are we having for dinner tonight? Where are we going tonight? Um, Setting up a house was very important, but having kids was very different, because then you go abroad and you are if you're taking babies, there's just so much stuff to take, and getting that little person on a new schedule. And I mean, that's when you need to be kind to yourself, because,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they are gonna make some very high demands of you.
Absolutely. True
So
talk
sleep
right
when the
there.
kid sleeps.
Yep.
I
I've
remember,
experienced that.
I remember having a baby, and if the baby fell asleep in my lap, I fell asleep, because that's when I got to sleep.
Yep.
But
Yep.
um yeah, it's just, there's just so much that goes into moving. And then yes, then when my kids were older and the schools were, a big issue, and finding the right schools, and you hear so many different opinions, and you always have, and even though we all kind of know this, when you hit the ground and you're in a new place, most of us just want to settle. There's just such a drive in people to create a home and settle. But you, as much as you need to do that, you also have to find what's right for yourself. And so for me, it's usually, finding the right school for the kids. But no matter what, there's always going to be some hiccup, and there's always going to be something I didn't expect. Then there will inevitably be something I just don't like. And that's why I have had to teach myself that, really I have to give things time. When I get to a place, I need to give things time. I need to give things consideration, because I know I have said things in front of my kids that I kind of regretted, like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this, and this school is terrible. And then you're leaving a child with, this feeling like, oh, there's something wrong with my school, and that insecurity that you can build in your children. And so I think my last point I want to make about moving abroad is, I think I've gone through all the complexities, but being kind and giving yourself time is probably the best thing you can do. When new things come up, sometimes it's easy to just panic, but rarely is it a crisis. And so give yourself time to get used to things. Maybe you're just uncomfortable with something because it's new. Maybe you heard one thing when you were researching something, and then it's different when you get there, but it doesn't mean it's always bad. So sometimes you just need to breathe, give yourself time, and say, okay, let me see if this can work out. Now, for some of our families who get to a school, they might find out this is not the right place for my child. My child has specific needs, and this school is not set up for a child. And I hate to use the word non-typical, because I think we're all non-typical in some way, but the schools are set up with certain standards, with certain ideas, and administrators have certain ideas about what kind of kids they want in schools. So I have had to counsel parents who really do find themselves in crisis and do realize, like, my kid's being ignored, my kid's being mistreated, my kid isn't understood, my kid is being bullied, because the child is not the kind of child that the school wants or knows how to deal with. And when you're in those kinds of crises, that's when you need to act. That's when you need to pull your kid out. And that's when you need to give yourself the gift of kindness and time, because you can't have your kid in one school one day, pull them out and have them settled in another school the next day, or have them with another provider the next day.
Right.
So whatever the issue is, give yourself time and give yourself space to settle, I guess.
Definitely. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head, in which I really like how your last point goes to the first point, right? You have to be kind during this transition. Not every transition is the same, but at the same time, figuring out what's a crisis versus what's just uncomfortable. I think that's such an important aspect there. So thank you so much, Erin. That is really helpful information. I hope I can take this little nuggets in my head and apply it to my next move soon as well, because another move again. But yes, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your insight, and for everyone who's watching. I think there are a couple things that we can all take away from this. But once again, if you are curious about some of the things we brought up, so we brought up international schools, we brought up self-care. In fact, we do have a webinar about international schools. So go ahead to our website and check that out if you are having this crisis. We also have another webinar coming up next month about self-care. So stay tuned for that in the future. Anyway, thank you so much for joining Global Education Therapy's webinar. And once again, thank you so much, Erin. And yeah, hope to see you soon, and have a great day. Take care.